Let's start. So we're going to be talking about adult education, its clients, and the funding, how it's generated. And so the eligible adults that are generating education funding, the eligible expenses, the interim funding formula. So just regarding the adult stream, and what is generated by this formula. So there's the student support, and there's the educational services funding. And a few words on how the funding is generated for the regional adult education centers and the community. So eligible adults that are generating education funding, as for the youth sector, the criteria of usually residing on community is mandatory. So by usually residing on community, we mean that the adult has to return to live on the community at least during the summertime. And of course, take a language a course. So it can be a language course. And when I say language, it's not just French and English. It can be your mother tongue, your First Nation mother tongue. It can be an upgrade class. It can be a vocational training. And it can be from just a secondary 4 math class to a full 7-2 a full hunting and fishing guide course. And of course, just 1 hour, because every hour counts for generating funding. I'm going to repeat that a couple of times. One thing also to take notice is that the instruction may be in person, it can be online, or a combination of both. And of course, it can be given in band-operated schools, in provincial or private schools, and of course in adult centers. So the big bottom here list all adults who attend at least 1 hour of class in any recognized school. And we take a full movie of the year. So not just a snapshot one day on September 30th, like the youth sector. We really want to capture all the students, the adults that were there from October of last year up to September of the current year. Regarding eligible expenses, it's the same as the youth sector. So salaries, pensions, and benefits, the costs associated with the delivery and administration of the instructional services. And this is also including a potential service agreement that you could have with a regional adult education center or school board. You can have 3 of them. It's really up to you to organize your services. There's a student support services. So here we're talking more about can have a social worker, psychologist, whatever professional that the students might require. You have the student transportation, which it's included seasonal, special, or just in the community, like a school bus. You have the travel for staff and professionals, the professional fees, operation and maintenance cost, rental cost. Also, if you need to rent a room or rent a building, it's eligible, and administration costs. And also there's, I'm not putting it there, but infrastructure is also eligible. It's not really eligible in the guidelines, but here at the regional office, we say, well, if you have no building, how can you deliver any educational services? So we decided that it's part of the mandate of ISC and of the community to, if they need to have an infrastructure, well, we can just build a place or work on an extension of a building already existing. So the interim funding formula, it's working for the adult component. So the calculation is based on the Ministry of Education of Quebec budgetary rules. Those rates are updated annually. And ISC, we added some components specific to First Nation, which are also updated annually. So here are the rates for 24-25. So you see, and it's per FTE. So 1,700 for language and culture, close to 600 for clothing, books, bus passes, stuff like that. And 159 for age 8 and plus. The one who on the nominal roll are identified as female or other gender. So there's feminine hygiene products. And here, the ISC stabilization. When we're talking about a decrease of no more than less than 1.5, more than 1.5%, it's really for the global budget in education. So adult could go down, but overall the education budget is not less than 1.5 difference. There won't be that stabilization. Just keep in mind that all the funding, no matter if it's coming from the youth sector or the adult sector, it comes as a big chunk in your band council as the budget for education. So the adult generated funding is part of the band council overall education funding, just like I was telling you. So it may be used in whole, in part, supplemented by the council for any eligible elementary, secondary activity or expense. So like we said, it could be for adult general education, vocational training, and purchasing services from a third party. Here are the rates per FTE. So there's a 5,000 decrease that went from 23-24 to 24-25. Janelle, my colleague, who's working on the funding, she's going to inquire at the Ministry of Education of Quebec to find out why it went that way, because, you know, 2 previous years before it was an increase of almost 10,000. So right now it's going down 5,000. So as soon as we get the information, we'll share it to the school council, and they're going to share the information to you. As with everything, it's the band council who's deciding what they're doing with the funding. And I know that some community, they decided to secure the funding coming from the adult, what the money the adult are generating. So it's something that you could ask your band council to do. This is the part of for the students who have to leave the community because either the program is not offered in the satellite or the regional adult education center in the community, or if there's no services at all. So in the nominal role, when you are filling up the information about the adults, there's a section after called accommodation and transportation. So when these sections are filled up, these are the amounts that are generated per FTE. It's not per student, of course. If a student go for 1 hour and he quit, it's not going to be generating the full amount. So it's really per FTE. So this can be used for student financial aid, counseling, bus, whatever. And of course, it can also be used just specifically for educational services. It's part of the big education budget. So what is funded? So you have the student support and the educational services funding. So here I'm describing a bit how it could be done. No, not how it could be done, but how it should be done. So because basically one student cannot be on 2 nominal roles. So a lot of question we get is, what do I do with a student who's coming from another community and coming in my community? So if we take the example of Marie-Fleur, who's leaving, let's say our community is Pessamit. Well, that's not a good example. Let's say Pakwashipi, and she goes to the Regional Education Center in Pessamit. So Pakwashipi, they're going to add the Pessamit Center on the nominal role and complete all the information about Marie-Fleur. So all community are going to do that. And once we're going to be working on the formula, activating the formula, all the nominal roles that have the Pessamit Center are going to be generating the money, and it's going to flow to Pessamit. in order for them to provide the educational services. And for all the community who put the Pessamit Regional Center, so they are going to be, of course, in the community that they are usually residing. And from there, the money to help the adults will be going straight to their community where they're residing. So the nominal role, you have the number of the school number, which is the generating the funding for educational services. Of course, it's only for band school. You don't pay for provincial school. And the community number is generating the funding for the adult support. And it's only for those who are leaving the community. So educational services, as we said, there's salaries, pension plan, equipment, premises, electricity, and the adult support goes from accommodation, seasonal transportation, stipends, etc. Important reminders. So education funding is determined by the nominal roll data. Everything is coming from the nominal roll. That's why either band-operated school or provincial school, each hour generates funding. So each hour is significant and has a funding impact. And to remind you that one adult FTE, it's 900 hours. And once again, the funds generated by the formula are not targeting an individual. They are intended to organize the educational services. So this way you can leverage other source of income from individuals, from the income assistance and for the employment and training service centers. So when an adult is receiving either income assistance or employment and training services funding, they should be included on the nominal roll also. And that won't have an impact on the funding generated by these two programs. But if the adult is receiving benefit from the urban centers, well, it means that he's living outside the community. So unfortunately, we don't have the authorities yet to help these students. And last slide. The regional adult education center. So the funding is coming from a portion of the budget that is generated by the nominal rolls, just like any communities. And there's also the agreement between the Ministry of Education of Quebec and the school council. So the funding that is generated is for the operating budget of the 4 regional adult education center and the school council. So we're talking salaries, teaching materials, travels, and of course the school council is doing a lot of work negotiations with the MEC to have the First Nation language recognized as a first language, to have the French and English recognized as a second or third language. They're looking to have the vocational training also to be recognized, that the school council and the communities could be recognized as entities that can develop and deliver their own vocational training. As for the community funding, well, like we said, it's coming from the adults nominal roll. And there's the additional investment from the 2021 federal budget, which is about 4.3 million for Quebec. So all communities are receiving an amount. The allocation model was developed by the FNEC, Chakapèche, the school council, CDFM, and Itomagun. So every community is getting a base amount. So even if the community don't have any students, they're still getting $50,000 in order to either develop an agreement or give some support to their adults. The community who have a center or a satellite, they're getting a base amount of $100,000. And the balance is distributed among all the communities based on the nominal. And when I say all the communities, we're not talking about the trees or the So voila. Any questions? No.
Daniel,
Yes.
towards the end, you were talking about the four point something million dollars. Your sound was going down a bit, so I didn't really get to hear all of that. You said something
Okay.
about $50,000 going somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's some community who don't have any members. They don't have a school. It's really, like there's some Mi'kmaq community. They just have a little piece of land, everybody's living there. So they're still going to get $50,000 for developing services, creating agreement, or helping giving allocation to the adults. Then you have the one like you who have a satellite or regional education center. They're getting $100,000, $100,000, yeah. And the balance is distributed among all the communities based on the nominal role.
No other questions?
It means you're expert or my presentation covered everything, or a mix of both.
I have a question because I'm new. I just wanted to ask because in reference to what Karina pointed out, that's what's been allotted. So you're negotiating now to have that, like the new amounts. So it's not something like there's 1 year, but this is going to continue, right? We just don't know at what amount.
The 4.3 million, you mean?
Yeah.
It's supposed to sunset in 26, 27.
Yeah.
The idea, because in Quebec, we're kind of in advance to the rest of Canada. We have the CDFM, who's here since 20, 30 years. Kichiamik in Lac-Simon, they celebrate 10 years. And we've been funding adult education since 20. So the idea was really to help in all the other provinces to start something for the adult education, either create something or. So we're getting the money, but to do the same. But for some community who already have all the infrastructure in place, but it can be to upgrade them.
Okay.
So the idea is in maybe 2 years before the 25, 26, the government is gonna. It was really the AFN that was working on that file. So they're gonna come back to them and say, so what do you think now that the centers are in place, the nominal role is generating the funding? Is it enough, or we should push on and ask for another budget supplement?
Okay.
Yeah. But from what we heard so far is that the perfect adult education program will be a mix between what we have now and the post-secondary, because the student living in community attending a satellite or center, they are not getting any funding from the adult, or at least they are not generating funding from the nominal role regarding allocation, support, and stuff like that. So my wild guess is that probably that a lot of regions are going to be pushing in that direction. We should be, it's adults, so they have kids, they need kindergarten, daycare, stuff like that. So that's my wild guess, but I don't think it's that wild.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer?
You bring up a good point, Danielle. This was part of the discussions that we had with the FNAC Technical Working Group on adult education. And so certainly those are the things that were brought up, because we know that the rest of Canada, adult education falls under post-secondary, And so those formulas generate the allowances in childcare and so forth, but in Quebec, because we're in Quebec, that doesn't happen. So that is the conversation that's being had for sure.
But the other way around, you know, maybe they're getting this, but are they getting funding for educational services? So I think it's either you have one or the other. Jennifer?
I didn't hear the beginning part of your response to is it that woman, that Lisa,
Lisa?
when you were talking about the schools. Lorna started nodding, and I didn't hear that part.
When probably that I was saying that students living in community, let's say
Yes.
attending your center, they are not generating money for support. No, it's just for educational services. So the best thing would be that they would be still generating allocation, student allocation support funding. But we're not there now, but that's why you have the income security program, the employability measures that are there, but sometimes it's not enough.
That's what I want to know. Thank you.